The crystal chandeliers in the fancy restaurant, called Larry, made little sparkly shadows that danced on the white tablecloths. Dominic Everett sat at one of the big, beautiful tables with his wife, Serafina Thaddeus. But instead of being kind, he was getting ready to do something really mean, like a musician playing a sad song on purpose. This restaurant was special to them because it was where they had first fallen in love. But tonight, everything was going to change forever. Serafina sat very still, holding her glass of wine, though she didn't drink from it. Her fingers wrapped tightly around the glass. Her skin was dark and smooth, and her face looked calm. But deep inside, she felt something was wrong. She could feel it in the way Dominic kept checking his phone all night and the small, sneaky smile on his face. She knew he was planning something bad, but she didn't know exactly what. Then Dominic said loudly, "I want a divorce." His voice wasn't quiet or soft at all. It was loud enough for the other people in the restaurant to hear. It seemed like he wanted them to listen, as if this was a show and they were his audience. Around them, rich and important people who were eating their fancy dinners stopped chewing and looked over, shocked. Their forks hung in the air, frozen as they listened. 7 years, Dominic continued, his words sharp like a knife. 7 years wasted on a woman who can't give me a child. He said it so meanly that it felt like poison filling the air. The words hurt Serafina, but she didn't show it. She kept her face calm, just like she had learned to do at all the big parties and important events over the years. She didn't let anyone see how much it hurt inside. As Serafina sat there not saying anything, a young woman in a bright red dress walked over to their table. Her dress was as red as a shiny apple, and it stood out against the soft, calm colors of the restaurant. This woman was Eleanor Chen, Dominic's secretary. She had been working with him for 2 years. She sat down next to Dominic like she belonged there, acting confident and smooth. She even put her hand on his, right there on the table, for everyone to see. A big diamond ring sparkled on her finger, catching the light. Serafina recognized that ring. She had seen it in Dominic's study one night when he had said he was busy working late. Now she knew the truth. All the other people in the restaurant were staring. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was like watching a TV drama, but in real life. Phones came out quietly as people started recording, wanting to capture this moment. Dominic and Serafina had always been seen as the perfect couple. Everyone talked about how they were the power couple of Seattle, ruling the business world together. But now, everyone was seeing them fall apart in the most dramatic way possible. Dominic leaned back in his chair, looking proud of himself. "Eleanor and I are getting married as soon as the divorce is done," he said, his voice full of confidence. "She understands the importance of family, of building a legacy." Then he looked at Serafina in a way that was cold and mean. "Unlike some people," he added, making it clear he was blaming her. Serafina stayed quiet, but her mind was racing. She thought about all the times they had tried to have a baby, all the doctor visits, and all the treatments she had gone through. She remembered crying herself to sleep while Dominic stayed late at work, pretending to be busy. He had always blamed her for their problems, making her feel like she wasn't good enough. But what Dominic didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that Serafina had learned something important recently. It wasn't her fault. She had found out that there was a solution to their problem, but Dominic had never let himself get tested. The truth was, the problem might have been with him all along. Serafina also had another secret, a big one. She had taken a special test just that morning. And the result? She was pregnant. Not just with one baby, but with 2. Twins. But Dominic didn't know this. Nobody did. She hadn't told anyone yet, and she wasn't about to tell him now. Slowly, Serafina placed her napkin on the table. She stood up, her midnight blue dress rustling softly as she moved. Everyone was watching her, waiting to see what she would do. With a calm and steady voice, she said, "The divorce papers will be on your desk tomorrow morning." Then she looked at Dominic with a tiny hint of a smile and added, "I suggest you get yourself tested before you make promises about children to your new fiancé." The restaurant went completely silent for a moment. Dominic's face changed. He looked confused, like he didn't understand what she meant. Eleanor stopped smiling, and for the first time she looked unsure of herself. "What does that mean?" Eleanor asked, her voice shaky. But Serafina didn't answer. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking loudly against the shiny marble floor. She didn't look back. She could feel the stares of everyone in the room. She could see the reflection of people holding up their phones in the restaurant's big windows. She could hear the whispers starting to spread, but she didn't care. Let them gossip. Let them talk. She was done letting Dominic control the story. When the valet brought her car, she got in and drove away. The city lights blurred around her as she thought about everything that had just happened. But she didn't cry. She didn't feel sad. Instead, she felt strong. She placed a hand gently on her flat stomach, where her 2 babies were growing. These twins were her secret for now, her private victory. Soon, everyone would know the truth, but she would share it on her own terms. As she drove home, Serafina smiled. Dominic thought he had won by embarrassing her in front of everyone, but he had no idea what was coming. Her babies, her work, and her own strength were going to be the things that gave her the last laugh. Dominic had tried to write the end of their story, but Serafina knew she would be the one to decide how it truly ended, and it was going to be amazing. Serafina had spent years researching fertility treatments, tirelessly working to improve the lives of men who could not have children. Her work had always been her passion, and she had crafted a revolutionary treatment that helped men who faced infertility issues. She was driven by a deep sense of purpose, knowing that her discoveries could change the lives of many who had long struggled with the emotional and physical challenges of infertility. Her research was groundbreaking, and she had put in a great deal of effort to make sure that no one could steal her work. Her intellectual property was safeguarded through careful patents, and her name was proudly attached to each and every one of them. Serafina was proud of her achievements, not just for the scientific community's recognition, but also for the hope she had given to so many families in need. However, despite her professional success, Serafina's personal life was far from ideal. She had once been married to Dominic Everett, a wealthy and ambitious businessman who had been supportive of her early career. Their marriage had been built on a shared vision of the future. At least, that was how it seemed in the beginning. And they had both been driven individuals, and their shared dreams had united them in their early years together. But as time went on, cracks began to appear in their relationship. The dream of parenthood, something they had both longed for, quickly became a source of tension and heartbreak. The turning point came when they realized they couldn't have children. For years, they had tried unsuccessfully, and the strain of this growing frustration began to erode their once strong bond. Dominic, in particular, could not come to terms with the fact that his own body might be the reason they couldn't conceive. He rejected the idea that he could be the one with the problem. Instead, he lashed out at Serafina, placing the blame squarely on her. He accused her of being the one who was incapable of having children, unable to even consider the possibility that his own fertility could be an issue. His refusal to confront the truth eventually became a major rift between them. Serafina, heartbroken and devastated, knew that the truth was much more complicated than Dominic was willing to admit. She had spent her career studying infertility, and while she was no stranger to the emotional pain that came with it, she also knew that the science behind infertility was often far more complex than people understood. She had been studying the medical side of reproduction for years, and deep down, She suspected that Dominic was the one who had fertility issues. However, he refused to take any tests to confirm his condition. His pride was too great, and he couldn't bear the thought of being seen as the one at fault. In his eyes, he was the picture of masculinity and success, and the idea that he could be infertile was simply too much to bear. As the years went on and their marriage deteriorated, Dominic's blame and resentment grew. He continued to tell anyone who would listen that the problem was with Serafina, not him. To him, her inability to conceive children was a reflection of some kind of personal failing. Eventually, their relationship reached its breaking point and they filed for divorce. But even after their marriage was over, Dominic's public smear campaign against Serafina continued. He publicly humiliated her, calling her defective and incapable of giving him the children he wanted. He didn't care that she had dedicated her life to studying fertility treatments or that she had developed a cutting-edge method that could help countless families. Instead, he used his wealth and influence to paint her as the villain in their failed marriage. After the divorce, Dominic quickly remarried, this time to a younger woman named Eleanor. He paraded his new relationship in front of the media, presenting himself as a man who had moved on from his past and was now living the life he had always dreamed of. The public was enamored by his new marriage, and Dominic reveled in the attention. He presented himself as a man who had put his infertility issues behind him, someone who had reclaimed control of his life and was now living the dream with his new, beautiful wife. The world seemed to forget the pain and heartbreak he had caused in his previous relationships. But while Dominic was busy building a new life with Eleanor, Serafina was quietly preparing for something much bigger. The truth was, Serafina was pregnant. Against all odds, her own research had led her to a treatment that worked, and she was carrying twins. It was a miracle of science, the very same research that had been mocked and dismissed by her ex-husband. For years, she had been told that her fertility was the problem, that she was the one to blame for their inability to have children. But now, the very treatment she had developed was helping her conceive, and she was about to bring 2 new lives into the world. Serafina was overjoyed, but she didn't want to make a public announcement just yet. She knew that the world wasn't ready for the truth, and she didn't want to be overshadowed by Dominic's new life with Eleanor. She wasn't interested in revenge, but she did want to make sure that the truth about their failed marriage would eventually come to light. It was a delicate situation. She had a chance to prove, once and for all, that the problem had never been with her. Dominic was the one who had been infertile all along, and now she had living, breathing proof of it. As the months went on and her pregnancy progressed, Serafina kept a low profile. She continued to work from home, refining her treatment and making sure that her research was progressing smoothly. She didn't want to draw attention to herself too soon, but she also knew that she couldn't hide her growing belly forever. She continued to work diligently, quietly waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. Dominic, on the other hand, threw lavish parties and displayed his new marriage to the world. He was so absorbed in his own narrative that he didn't notice the growing storm brewing just beneath the surface. Serafina's former mother-in-law, Dr. Helen Lee, a respected fertility specialist in her own right, paid her a visit one day. Helen had always been a significant presence in Dominic's life, and she had been a key player in his previous marriages. Helen, who had always been skeptical of Dominic's actions, had some startling news to share with Serafina. She revealed that Dominic had been married before, and that his first wife had also been blamed for their inability to conceive. This was not the first time that Dominic had deflected blame onto his partner. Helen had known for years that Dominic had a pattern of avoiding responsibility when it came to his infertility, and she feared that his new marriage to Eleanor would end in the same way. Helen's visit was the catalyst for Serafina to take action. She and Helen began working together to gather evidence that Dominic's infertility was the root cause of the issues in their marriage. It wasn't just about revenge or proving a point. It was about protecting Eleanor from the same heartache that Serafina had suffered. Helen explained that Dominic's medical history was full of red flags, but he had always refused to undergo tests to confirm his infertility. It was a pattern that had repeated itself in each of his marriages. Serafina knew that she had to act quickly. The treatment she had developed was now proven to work, and she had living proof that Dominic had been the one with the fertility problem all along. She had been pregnant with twins, and the scientific evidence was clear. Without Dominic's infertility, she would never have been able to conceive. It was time to make the truth known to the world. Serafina's research continued to advance, and she worked tirelessly to prepare a groundbreaking paper that would expose Dominic's infertility. She knew that it was the perfect opportunity to reveal the truth at a major fertility conference where the world's leading scientists and doctors would gather. The paper she had written not only documented her successful treatment, but also included a case study of Dominic's infertility, something he could no longer deny. As the days passed, the twins grew stronger in Serafina's womb, and she prepared herself for the moment when she would reveal the truth. She was ready to expose Dominic for what he truly was, a man who had caused immense pain and suffering in the lives of the women he had married, all because of his refusal to acknowledge his infertility. This was no longer about revenge. It was about exposing the truth and making sure that no one would ever again be blamed for something that wasn't their fault. When the day of the conference finally arrived, Serafina took the stage with confidence. She spoke about her research and the lives it had changed. She talked about the groundbreaking treatment she had developed and the countless families it had helped. But the most important moment came when she revealed the living proof of her work, her twins, Miles and Lila, who were the undeniable evidence that Dominic's infertility had been the cause of the problems in their marriage. The crowd gasped as they saw the twins, their resemblance to Dominic unmistakable. As the audience reacted to the revelation, Serafina stood firm. She didn't need to say anything more. Her research and her children had spoken for themselves. The truth was out, and Dominic could no longer hide behind his lies. He had been exposed, and the world now knew that he was the one who had caused all the pain and heartbreak. Serafina's life had come full circle. She had faced years of humiliation, pain, and suffering, but in the end, she had triumphed. She had not only proven that Dominic was the one with the fertility issue, but she had also helped countless families who had struggled with infertility. Olivia Vasquez, who had covered all 3 of Dominic's marriages and divorces, walked up to him with a microphone. "Mr. Everett," she asked, "do you have anything to say about Dr. Gregory Finch's presentation? Or maybe you can explain why you blamed your wives for infertility problems when the tests now show it was actually your problem." The situation had become a perfect storm of both science proving things right and personal justice. Medical professionals gathered around Serafina, eager to learn about the treatment that could help their patients. The twins, now back in their stroller, became the center of attention as doctors marveled at how well the treatment worked. Rachel Matthews handed Serafina a stack of business cards from companies that wanted to help spread the treatment around the world. One card had a note from Eleanor: "Thank you for saving me from the same problem. I'm sorry I didn't know sooner." As the day ended, Serafina sat in her office, looking at the Seattle skyline, her twins playing at her feet. Her phone was ringing nonstop with calls from medical journals, research centers, and women's groups. But the call she had been waiting for came just before the sun set. "We need to talk," Dominic said, his voice not as confident as usual. "About the children. About everything. Serafina watched as Miles stacked blocks while Lila tried to climb her desk. Yes, she agreed, but we'll talk on my terms. She paused, letting him feel the weight of what she was saying. Bring your medical records. All of them. The sun set over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of victory. In her office, surrounded by proof of her professional success and personal triumph, Serafina finally allowed herself to feel the importance of the day. Her research would help many families, and her children would know their father. Most importantly, the truth had finally set everyone free. That night, they met in a private room at Larry. The room felt smaller than Dominic remembered. He sat stiffly in his chair, facing Serafina, the woman he had once pushed away. Tonight, she had control. Her quiet confidence was stronger than his wealth ever had been. The twins were with Rachel Matthews, but their presence was still felt in the photos spread out on the table. School pictures, birthday parties, first steps, a record of 18 months Dominic had missed because of his pride. They're beautiful, Dominic whispered, touching a photo of Miles and Lila from their first birthday. His son had a serious face, and his daughter had her mother's smile. It was clear they were his children. They are, Serafina agreed. Miles loves science. He likes to watch experiments in the lab, from a safe distance, of course. Lila's a natural leader. The daycare staff say she organizes the other kids for games. Dominic swallowed hard. He could see his own childhood traits in the descriptions of his children. The stack of medical records he had brought sat untouched beside him. They both knew what they contained. 3 marriages, 3 wives who couldn't have children, and 1 genetic problem Dominic refused to admit. I've talked to my lawyers, he said finally. I want to make this right. Anything you want, money, shares in the company, a trust fund for the kids. Serafina stopped him with a hand. This isn't about money, Dominic. It never was. Do you know what Miles asked me last week? He wanted to know why all his friends at daycare have dads who pick them up sometimes, but he doesn't. Her words hit him hard. He thought of his own father, who had always been distant, and how he had promised to be different when he had children. Instead, he had ended up being worse, denying the children he had because of his pride. My research foundation is launching next month, Serafina continued. We'll offer free fertility testing, focusing on men's health. Your genetic problem is more common than we thought. Many marriages have ended because men like you refuse to consider they might be the problem. Dominic flinched. He remembered what Eleanor's mother had told him about the support group for women who had suffered because of men like him. Serafina's voice softened. Do you know how many women think about suicide after being shamed for infertility? How many marriages fall apart because of a simple test that could have shown the real problem? Serafina went on. Your ex-wives have turned their pain into something good. Eleanor is even on the board of the foundation now. The waiter arrived with their food, but Dominic couldn't eat. He felt the weight of his past mistakes, not just the wives he had blamed, but the children he had almost lost. The twins have a checkup next week, Serafina said, cutting her salmon. The pediatrician has all their medical records, their genetic connection to you, their progress. If you want to be a part of their lives, that's where we'll start. Dominic frowned. A medical appointment? Yes, Serafina said firmly. You need to understand their health before you can be a part of their lives emotionally. They're not just proof of your virility or public image. They're children who need a father who sees them for who they are. She pulled out a thick folder with medical records, evaluations, and reports. This is responsible parenting. Every decision documented, every milestone recorded, every potential health issue tracked. Her words weighed on him. He had missed all of this while he was hiding from the truth. Serafina continued. There will be conditions, therapy, both individual and for co-parenting. Full honesty about your medical history to help others. publicly admitting the truth about our divorce and your pattern with the first wife and Eleanor. The twins deserve the truth, not your convenient stories." Dominic nodded slowly. This was his last chance for redemption. "Your company's resources will be welcomed," Serafina added, "but only if you've learned the right lessons from all this." She showed him a video of the twins in her lab, wearing tiny safety goggles, laughing as they watched a harmless chemical reaction. They're curious, brilliant, and completely unaware of the storm that surrounded their birth, Serafina said softly. "I want to keep it that way. They should know you as the father you can become, not the man you were." The enormity of the task ahead humbled him. To prove he could be a good father, he had to face the mistakes he had made and change. "When can I meet them?" Dominic asked quietly. "After the medical appointment," Serafina said. "If you show up, pay attention, and prove you understand this is about them, not you, we'll arrange a supervised visit." Her phone lit up with a photo from Rachel Matthews. The twins had fallen asleep during their bedtime story, holding their favorite stuffed animals. Dominic stared at the photo, seeing his own features softened by innocence. "They wake up early," Serafina said, gathering her things. "Miles likes his oatmeal with blueberries, and Lila won't eat eggs unless they're scrambled with cheese. They both love story time, but get cranky if they miss their nap." "These are the details that matter now, Dominic," she said. "Not your pride or public image, just two little people who need the best from both their parents." She stood up, ready to leave him with the weight of his choices. "The appointment is Tuesday at 10. Dr. Chen's office. Eleanor's mother. She's their pediatrician, and she'll be brutally honest about whether you're ready to be in their lives." Dominic watched as she walked away, but this time he didn't feel anger or resentment. He felt the weight of his mistakes and the faint stirrings of hope. The appointment would be the first step toward proving he could be the father his children needed. The road ahead would be long, but he had a chance to earn their love. The following year, things had changed. The twins were turning 3, and Dominic was a different man. He had gone through therapy, co-parenting classes, and had worked hard to earn his children's trust. He now wore jeans and a casual shirt decorated with planets, a gift from Miles, and proudly displayed it. The twins ran up to him as soon as he arrived at their party. "Did you bring the surprise?" they asked eagerly. "Of course, Princess," Dominic said, setting down a large package. He smiled as he helped Serafina with the decorations, and their eyes met across the room in a moment of peaceful understanding. Their co-parenting relationship had changed, growing into one built on respect and love for their children's happiness. The party was full of people who had benefited from Serafina's foundation, and Dominic couldn't help but feel grateful. He found himself alone with Eleanor, watching the twins play. "I never properly apologized to you," he said quietly. "I was so focused on my image that I hurt everyone around me." Eleanor smiled, resting her hand on her growing belly. "The best apology is changed behavior," she said. "And you've certainly changed. Those kids adore you." Dominic had worked hard to change. He gave interviews about his journey, encouraging other men to get tested and helping break the stigma around male infertility. The foundation, which was supported by Dominic's business resources and Serafina's medical knowledge, had helped many couples start families. The best part of the party came when Dominic and Serafina gave the twins a special gift. A small laboratory set in their playroom with safe experiments and tiny lab coats that had Dr. Miles and Dr. Lila embroidered on them. Lila excitedly put on her coat and asked, "Can we do experiments now?" Miles, already looking serious, asked about the safety goggles. Serafina laughed and shared a smile with Dominic, amazed at how their children had a perfect mix of his determination and her love for science. Later, as the party came to an end and tired kids were picked up by their parents, Dominic helped clean up while the twins slept on the couch. "They look so peaceful," he said. I can't believe I almost missed all of this. Serafina stopped cleaning for a moment. But you didn't, she said. You worked hard, and now they trust you. That's what matters. Serafina looked at the latest report on her desk. The foundation had helped thousands of families and raised millions for research. Their personal story had turned their pain into something that helped others. Next week's Father-Child Science Day at the preschool is coming up, Serafina reminded Dominic. Miles wants to show everyone his understanding of chemistry, but only with safe materials. Dominic chuckled, remembering Miles's plans. And Lila insists on wearing her tiara with her lab coat, he said. She thinks princesses can be scientists too. Serafina smiled. I see no problem with that. As Dominic carried the sleeping children to bed that night, he thought about how far they had come. From the public scandal to peaceful co-parenting, from denial to acceptance, and from shame to pride. The journey wasn't easy, but seeing their children sleeping without any worries made him sure that it was all worth it. Next Thursday, same time, he said to Serafina, I thought we could take them to the new Children's Museum exhibit on space exploration. They'll love that. Serafina agreed. Just remember Miles's allergy medicine if you get ice cream after. As Dominic stood in the doorway of the twins' rooms, he realized how much they had grown. Miles's ceiling was filled with glow-in-the-dark stars, and his bookshelf had both fairy tales and children's science books. They are amazing, Dominic said, smiling. He thought about the changes in his life and how he had gone from being a man full of pride to one who had learned humility and love. His children had taught him that love was not about controlling others, but about accepting them and growing together. 5 years had passed since the life-changing medical conference, and now the ballroom where Serafina's heart had once broken was full of celebration. It was her 40th birthday and the Foundation's 5th anniversary. The guest list was full of families whose lives had been changed by her research. Miles and Lila, now 8 years old, wore formal clothes and greeted guests with grace. Miles, in his miniature tuxedo, explained the scientific ideas behind their mother's research, while Lila, in her purple party dress, charmed the donors with stories of her experiments. Dominic watched them from across the room, feeling proud. They had his ambition, but their mother's compassion. The past 5 years had taught him more about love than his first 40 years had. A woman named Helen Lee, now retired from pediatric work, sat with Dominic and praised their children. They are proof that healing is possible, she said. The evening started with a video showing the families the foundation had helped. Dominic saw Vivian in the crowd with her own twins now 3 years old, happy after heartbreak. Serafina took the stage as the foundation's director, and the room became quiet as she spoke about how they had begun their journey 5 years ago. Shame and silence destroy families, she said, but we've helped over 10,000 couples conceive, and more importantly, we've changed the way people talk about fertility. Miles and Lila joined their mother on stage, holding awards. The first recipient, Miles said, is someone who taught us that it's never too late to change, to grow, and to become better. He looked at Dominic with pride. Our father. Dominic was surprised. This wasn't part of the program. He walked to the stage, feeling the importance of the moment. Lila took the microphone. 5 years ago, she said, our daddy learned that being strong means telling the truth. He helped other men be brave too. They gave him an award with words that made his eyes fill with tears for turning personal truth into public hope. Serafina stood beside him, her eyes glistening. Dominic Everett didn't just admit his mistakes, she said. He made it his mission to help other men face their fertility issues without shame. The twins hugged Dominic tightly, and the room filled with applause. Dominic felt the weight of the award in his hands, but the real treasure was the love of his children. Later, as the party ended, Dominic found Serafina on the balcony where they had shared their first dance at their wedding. The city skyline sparkled below. "Did you plan this?" he asked softly. "The award was their idea," Serafina smiled. "They wanted everyone to know how proud they are of you." Dominic watched as their children showed a simple science experiment to a group of guests. "They're incredible," he said. "You did that, Serafina. You gave them strength, wisdom, and the courage to face the truth." "We did it together," she said. "Once you learned to be the father they deserved." The twins were now explaining Miles's latest plant experiment. Lila was organizing other children into a mock laboratory team, showing her natural leadership skills. Dominic smiled. "Sometimes I wake up afraid it's all a dream," he admitted, "that I'm still that man who cared more about his image than the truth." Serafina touched his arm lightly. "That man wouldn't have won this award," she said. "That man wouldn't have helped build this foundation. That man wouldn't have earned our children's pride." The night ended with the twins sleeping in a quiet room, surrounded by pictures of families the foundation had helped. Dominic and Serafina sat with them, no longer bitter exes, but partners in the most important job of all, raising children who knew that love was stronger than pride and that truth was more powerful than image. Serafina looked at the sleeping twins. "They're our greatest experiment," she whispered, "our most beautiful success." Dominic nodded, feeling a peace he had never known before. He had learned that his legacy wouldn't be his money or business. It would be these two amazing children and the many families whose lives were changed by his story. The truth that once almost destroyed him had instead set them all free, creating a legacy of love. This story also has a message for strong women who have faced betrayal. If you've been blamed or abandoned because you couldn't have children, remember this: your worth is not based on whether you can have children. Like Serafina, you might have faced cruelty and blame, but you can turn your pain into something powerful. Infertility is not your fault, and it doesn't define you. Don't let people's ignorance break you. Life can bring unexpected blessings when you trust in yourself. If you ever feel betrayed, know that the right person will stand by you and face challenges together. Your future is not written by your past hurts. You are strong and worthy of unconditional love no matter what. Thank you for watching. If you like this story and want to see more, please subscribe to our channel. That way you won't miss any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and share what you think in the comments. We love hearing your thoughts. Also, don't forget to check out the other videos on our channel. We'll see you in the next story.